3, 2, 1, and we're live. Is it not playing? Oh, here we go.
Back again, ladies and gentlemen.
The Eigenbros.
Spooky episode number 2.
Yeah, of the Eigenbros. It's a follow-up episode of the UFO series.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So get your fucking
tinfoil hats.
That's right.
Like we do.
This is Conspiracy Corner now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, we just kind of want to do a follow-up episode because someone that we follow very closely, who we're friends with personally.
I wouldn't go that far.
Someone, I won't say who, but it rhymes with Ro Jogan.
Shit, I wish we were friends personally with Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
We'd be a lot richer than we are now.
I know, get invited to stuff. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So,
Anyway,
guys. So we're going to go ahead and talk about UFOs. So Joe Rogan's podcast had Bob Lazar on recently, and we felt like we had to jump onto this one. So just to start things off, guys, make sure you subscribe to our channel. It's Eigenbros. Also, check us out on Twitter. It's at Eigenbros. And then we're also on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, if you want to check out our podcast audio. And I guess let's jump into it, Juan.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, yeah. Pull up that format for me, Juan,
Gotcha.
too.
Boom.
Actually, I can't even see it. Can you?
Yeah, I can.
So,
We want to give you a little introduction.
yeah. So what do you know about it, Juan? I know we talked about it last podcast, but did you have any? I guess I think we should start off with maybe a little bit background, maybe a recap. So, yeah. You got anything to start off with?
Of UFOs or Bob Lazar?
Bob Lazar, UFOs, whatever. Just the topic in general, I guess.
When I was a wee young child. No. I started following UFO stuff when I was like young, and now it's kind of become. I kind of left that culture and the inquiry a couple, maybe like almost 10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun. It was fun looking into it. It was fun learning sort of the sci-fi element, because I think we're both science nerds.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
that sci-fi element of how aliens could be possible and UFO technology pulls us in. I think it's one of the easier things for scientists to get pulled into.
Yeah, I think you're right, because UFO technology is just fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, anybody who's a tech guy or,
Yeah.
who has that kind of love or interest in that kind of sci-fi stuff,
Yeah.
I think is going to have some attraction to UFOs.
Yeah.
And like we said in the last podcast, we're not really too into conspiracy, occult kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But UFOs are one of these things that's kind of like, there's something alluring to it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to let go completely.
But yeah, it's not to sort of take away from the fact that, the main elements, I think, that at least draw me in and I want to highlight to people, because there are those skeptically minded scientists that say, oh, it's a bunch of crock,
Right.
But there is, like you said, that fascination with the tech, the possibility of a future where, we get to sort of manipulate gravity or how interact with gravity other than just feeling
Feeling its effect,
being put down day to day by gravity. Sometimes you just want to push back. Okay?
That's the real man right there. Gravity always trying to keep you down, huh?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's that kind of draw that's interesting, and we'll indulge occasionally, I think.
Yeah.
And this is one of those occasions. So please stay along for the ride.
Yeah. So let's jump to Bob Lazar. Here, Juan. So Bob Lazar was on Joe Rogan once again, and he was accompanied by this guy, Jeremy Corbell. And I guess they did a documentary.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it. It's like Bob Lazar and UFO something, UFO sightings or something.
Commas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's a documentary recapping the whole. I believe it's a recap of the whole 1989 story that Bob Lazar told.
Yeah.
Which is actually what we did the video on last time. His 1989 interview.
Yeah. So check out that episode if you want to.
Yeah, and
catch up on that.
This is like the next step to that. So Jeremy Corbell, I guess, has been working with Bob to try to bring to light some of the things that maybe weren't said in the 1989 interview, and also kind of corroborate Bob and kind of give him more credibility.
Right.
So they kind of explore a little bit more. Bob Lazar, I think in the 1989 interview, worked with a guy named George Knapp, and he's this radio host, like television journalist, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
He has this broadcast in Las Vegas where he talks about how UFOs and everything, or he talks about UFOs. Mm-hmm. And he had Bob Lazar on his radio show, and that's, I think, where he broke the news about the whole, S4, Area 51, Bob Lazar being at Area 51 and aliens. And that was, I guess, the big moment for Bob. And I guess that's kind of the history of how this whole thing kind of broke, this whole scoop. And yeah, man,
but the claim, let's not skip this over, but the claim to Bob Lazar is that he worked at Los Alamos and in Area 51, some agent kind of pulled him in, and that's how he was able to, be put into this situation where he was able to see alien craft, allegedly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I did a lot of research on this. I just hope I can actually get it out in a coherent manner.
Sure. Yeah. No, there's a lot to be skeptical about.
There is. This one's a tough one to crack, man. I'll say that. It's pretty tough. There's just so much on both sides. It's like you either love Bob or you hate him.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough there, I think, there's ammo there there's enough ammo to give to both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess maybe we should actually start pulling up some clips here, Juan.
Yeah, sure.
Let's take a look at, let me see.
The first one?
I don't know, though. Let me think, because the first one, let's see, what can we say about it? Let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. It's about 9 minutes long. Let's just go through it a little bit and add some commentary.
So this is just to give you in case you haven't seen the video, the interview with Rogan and Bob Lazar, just give you some idea of what they're talking about. Bob Lazar makes a claim that some of the UFOs, one out of the 9 that he saw, or that he interacted with, some of them were probably here for a very long time, meaning they were probably dug up archaeologically.
Or they might have. He said there was a claim that they were dug up archaeologically.
Yeah.
And we'll hopefully attach this video to the podcast so you don't have to keep clicking back and forth.
Sure.
If everything goes well.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and play it, Juan.
All right.
An experience.
Now, believe it or not, I'm not into UFOs. I don't follow stories or,
Even after your experiences?
No, I'm fascinated with the technology, and it irks me like every night I go to sleep that, that it was my own doing, essentially, that prevented me from continuing on in the project. I mean, it's that to be on that cutting edge of technology is so alluring to me.
Right.
But, by the same token, I don't really care that there's aliens or where they come from. I mean, the prize is the technology, and that's what I'm fascinated by. But so I don't listen to UFO stories and that sort of thing. But George Knapp is, he's the guy that has the contacts and tries to thread everything together. And what he recently told me is he found, I don't know, it was either documentation or people that he spoke to. It's that the existence of this project, the project that I was on, it's something that they seem to take out every 8 or 10 years.
So that's a very specific memo, and this is actually this is the first time I'll be very clear with people about it.
By the way, this guy looks like a roadie. You know
What does that
I'm saying?
mean?
Like a guy who sells T-shirts for the band. That's
Yeah, he does. With his fucking tattoo and hipster haircut and beard.
And the beard,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. He's like, I used to be a roadie, and I got really into UFOs.
And this guy that he's talking about, Juan's talking about, is Jeremy Corbell. This is the guy who helped Bob do the latest documentary.
Yeah, I don't have a good feeling about this guy.
I don't either, but we'll continue on for now.
It's a big topic of conversation right now. It's called the Wilson Memo. You can look it up. Admiral Wilson met with a scientist who's actually was featured in one of my films. Everybody has been debating whether or not this document of a conversation with a sitting admiral at the time is a real document. It's an actual conversation that happened, and this document is real. Everybody wants to know. The world is going crazy right now in the UFO world. I'll tell you straight up right now, I'm in the position to know, and it is a real document, that it is real. So the conversation you read in that conversation was had. I can't attest to every...
You're not...
Alex Jones voice. I have the documents. Documents are real.
Being very clear.
Sure.
Please.
No problem. So there was a document that is circulating right now that is really big. It's going around everywhere. People are asking and wondering.
What is this document?
It's called the Wilson Memo, is how you can find it online. Or the Wilson Leak.
There it is. Jimmy's got it. The Wilson Memorandum. Use of human volunteers.
No.
I just wanted to make sure that was it. Yeah.
No, that's not it.
Okay.
Yeah. So Admiral Wilson meets with this scientist, and they have this discussion, oddly enough, at special projects at EG&G. And if I remember, the document is from 2001. I'm telling everybody right now, it's real. And we'll see. My history is pretty good with saying if something's real or not, right? So here we go. The document comes out. They meet at EG&G special projects. In 1989, they stumble into a problem. This happens. They put the technology away, and then they bring it back out and see if material science has caught up and if they can make any progress. So this document kind of talks about this process. The big thing I get from it, and a lot of it's vindicating to Bob, and one of the things it's vindicating, besides the EG&G thing, is that private industry, so this guy's an admiral, and he says, I found out about your SAP, your Special Access Program. I need to know about it. And he's going to a private part of industry, and he is denied access. And he says, I should be running this program. And they were able to deny him access. So I think the takeaway here is, check it out. I'm telling you that is an actual correct, that is a leak. Now, everything said in that document, I don't know.
What are you talking about? What is said in that document specifically?
It's between a scientist and an admiral that are sitting, and they're having a meeting, and they're talking about the search for the UFO subject, the search to get special access program access to all of these different things like reverse engineering programs. So
just for the record, because he's kind of droning on about this.
He is.
So,
that's probably enough anyway for what I want to talk about. So you can go ahead and close that clip off.
Yeah. I mean, so let's just for those who were kind of glossing over what he was saying, like, to summarize, how would you summarize his point?
Yeah. So the main point there I wanted to draw was the whole Wilson memo.
Yeah.
So that Wilson memo he's talking about how the world is going crazy. I haven't seen anything really about this. And Jamie even mentions in the video later on how it took him a while to even dig this up. It's like literally just a thing and a scanned document on Imager that is completely could be bogus, could be real or not. Like, of course, this is another thing that a lot of conspiracy people do, and a lot of people who make claims do. They say, oh, trust me, I have a really good track record of saying things that are true, so this document must be true, which is exactly what Jeremy Corbell did.
Yeah.
It gives me no kind of evidence of actually if this document's real or not.
Yeah. I
took a look at the Wilson memo. It's like a 15-page document, and it's kind of like a transcribed conversation with notes that I forgot the guy who I forgot the guy who actually took the notes. I didn't write it down. I think his name is Dolan. Something
Are you
Dolan.
sure it wasn't Wilson?
No,
Just
Wilson
kidding,
is Admiral Wilson is the guy who a conversation's being had with. And he is the guy who ran some division of the Department of Defense during the time that I guess of sometime in the late 90s.
Sure.
And I guess it was relevant to the time Bob was at Area 51.
But the claim that he makes is that
The claim is that Wilson confirms that there is some UFO projects being worked on in Area 51. And I did look up the Wikipedia of Wilson, Admiral Wilson. I think his full name was Thomas Wilson. Dang, I didn't write it down again. My notes are bad. But I believe his name was Admiral Thomas Wilson or something. Don't quote me if that's incorrect, but he's easy to find. He was, in fact, actually the guy who was running the Department of Defense at that time. But this is all kind of like, this whole document could be made up.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we've known Bob Lazar's story for decades now.
Sure.
So who's to say that someone just didn't type this up and try to make an official looking document?
Yeah.
Nobody I've seen of any credibility has corroborated this evidence saying this is an actual government document. Everywhere I've seen is just people saying, oh, it could be real, it could be fake, blah, blah, blah. Who knows? There's no real, any confirmation by anybody with any real authority that I've looked into.
Yeah, I agree.
So Jeremy Corbell, once again, is going off the whole, I'm a trusted source, therefore trust me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess I wanted to speak with you about that one. What's the vibe you're getting from Jeremy?
He's kind of like a peddler a little bit. Like he's trying to sell something, like sell an idea to you, and then not convincingly enough, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Like he's trying to draw the dots for you. And I think even Joe recognizes this, so he kind of pushes back at him a little bit with some hostility. And I think it's welcome because, you know, you're taking a guy like Bob Lazar, if we are to believe Bob's story, right, to the fullest extent, where he feels like an innocent bystander in all this. You kind of just think, oh, this guy's, it's kind of like he's using him a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, that's my take from him.
I think I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah.
Jeremy's one of these guys who he does the classic smiles while talking to you, saying a point.
Yeah.
Which I fucking can't stand because that usually means that someone's trying to appeal to you emotionally to agree with them. Of course, that's not really a great indicator, but he's one of those. He does that kind of tell sign there. And yeah, he gives me the vibe of a guy who's trying to speak on Bob's behalf, yet he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So he's like trying to convince you with emotion and also convincing with his credibility, which I don't know anything about Jeremy Corbell's credibility, so it's just not convincing at all to anyone who's a real skeptic.
Yeah, his credentials aren't. I mean, like I'm telling you, he looks like a roadie. I mean, not to take away from his image. I'm pretty sure it's a cool look, but like. I mean, like it. If anything, it takes away from people trying to, like if you don't have enough convincing enough information, like the Wilson memorandum, like you're saying,
Wilson memo.
Yeah. If there isn't like, how do you say it? Like, okay, because we have the Freedom of Information Act, right, where we can request documents that are beyond a certain time where like the government has to can release certain information to the public, right?
Not quite. The thing is, the government can choose to continue to keep certain documents classified.
Okay.
There is no must release. They can continually just keep renewing the classification of certain documents if they want to.
Okay. But if they don't,
the thing is, if they don't, but the thing is, you know, there is no mandatory they must release these documents.
Right. Okay. So I mean, yeah, like, but that's what I'm saying. Those are more official documents if they are released directly from
the government.
Right. I mean, it seems counterintuitive, but those documents are guaranteed to be internal and real.
If there's some kind of way of proving it's a government document, what I would have liked to see is Jeremy Corbell actually have a link or something where it's been corroborated by experts who know how to analyze government documents.
Yeah.
And then they tell you how they can know that it's an official government document. Or at least if they don't tell you, at least you have people who are credible in saying that these are actually government documents on video somehow.
Exactly.
So his hearsay, whatnot, it's bullshit. And I don't really accept the Wilson memo because it has no evidence behind it.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So I guess let's go to the video 2 here, Juan. And that one ended at, 3 minutes and 51 seconds? just to keep note.
351.
Yeah. No, I say that last video we watched. Let's go ahead and just watch the second video from the start.
Okay.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
You should tell him some of the stuff that you read that you don't know is true. I mean, if the stuff was true about the propulsion stuff, I mean, anyway,
Well, what have you read? What have you
what
read?
you saw too. I mean, you know.
What are you talking about? Spill the beans, Bob.
I got to poke the bear here a little
Get some more liquor in you.
Well, I mean, the only thing I could verify was what I had my hands on. There was talk of weapon systems, that there were different projects. Project Galileo, Project Sidekick was supposed to be weapon applications of the craft. Project Looking Glass had to do with time, any effects of time in the craft. Now, I don't think we're not talking about making a time machine like in science fiction, but we're talking about, small distortions, intentional distortions of time, and how that can be used, as a not as a it was part of a weapon program.
How are you informed in this? About
These
this?
again were just the small briefings that I read, but again, I don't really like to talk about those because I don't have any information on them, and it was just small briefings.
But you told Commander Fravor that what he saw might have been a time dilation and not
it
with
could be
propulsion.
because
Yeah.
gravity affects time. Space time. I'm sure you've heard of that, and what Commander Fravor saw as he was in the F-18 approaching it, he said he described it as a ping pong ball in a cup and shaking it back and forth. It was moving that fast. Now, obviously, if there's anything inside there, it's going to be battered to hell. But, my point was that, one of two things. Either there's a gravitational envelope in there which negates any inertia effects, or you are seeing through a gravity distortion field. So, just like you're looking at a hot highway and you see, an
like water.
optical distortion going through there. Well, the same thing happens in gravity, and the craft may not actually be moving like that. It may just look like it because you're...
All right. So what's the guy's name? Bob's point there was he was talking about that the vehicle has some kind of gravity propulsion, right? And we've talked about this in the last one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially this UFO operates instead of with the traditional combustion with a gravito field or something. I noticed this time he didn't really talk about anything electric with this one. So his story kind of, I don't know if it changed. Oh, I guess he did. Because Joe, I think, later asked him about the aircraft lifting up when he actually saw a test. And Bob said there was an initial electromagnetic discharge and rose using gravity, I guess. So I guess it is a gravito electric propulsion system. Now, I don't remember. I didn't research this. I just thought of this now. I thought he said something about how there was no electromagnetic fields at all in this craft.
No, yeah. They said they didn't measure any.
Yeah. But if that's the case, then something's off there.
I don't know,
He did say there was a
but he
gravito
didn't
electric.
say I think he's using sloppy terminology, because he's not making any indication about what the state of the craft is in. If it's floating, because he said
it's all gravity when it's floating or something.
Yeah, but if it's sitting on the ground, there's
The initial electromagnetic pulse or something.
there's not going to be anything. If it's sitting in the
in the hangar bay.
yeah. If he
Okay.
said, there's no magnetic field coming out of it, nothing, then I can see that. But if it's flying in the air,
Well,
or
here's the
something-
thing. The way he described how the engine worked,
Yeah,
he said, imagine there's a synchrotron, right?
yeah,
This synchrotron has some kind of particle that's being accelerated inside of it. That particle is shot up through a tube in the center, and it bombards element 115.
yeah.
That element 115 becomes charged, and then I guess it gets accelerated into some tubes or something. And those tubes have a gas in there that they interact with, and that ionized element 115 annihilates with the matter in there, because I guess the element 115 he's saying created antimatter. So in that annihilation,
He didn't say that here, but he said that in some other interviews, I imagine. Yeah, he didn't. Say
I think you're right. I think he said in another interview. I can't remember now. I think he might have said
But
a
that's
little
his
bit, but
full
not
story.
that full.
Yeah, he didn't really go into the tech here.
But he said
yeah.
in that whole thing, there was some electrical energy from that was used. And I guess that probably is the electric part of his propulsion. But then he said from everything else, it was all gravity. So they use gravity waves to do everything else.
Sure.
Now, here's one of the thoughts I had about this. Now, I'm not sure how familiar our audience is. If you're not familiar, we have these new gravitational interferometers that have been invented in, what was it, 2014 or something? I don't want to get it wrong. Can you look it up real quick?
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I don't know how hard it's going to be. You don't have to look it up.
Yeah. Let's just say within this decade.
Yeah.
Or era.
So it's So it's LIGO, Virgo, I think is another one. Then there's like another one somewhere else. I forget. And these gravitational interferometers are basically gravity wave detectors. And these are actually things that exist that physicists have invented, and they can detect gravity waves. So the first thing I believe that the gravitational wave detectors detected were two colliding black holes. And they were like several light years away. Now, the thing that Bob talks about with this gravity propulsion engine is it relies on gravity waves to be able to move. So my thought was, if this thing or this technology has the ability to generate gravity waves, this should be detectable at LIGO.
Yeah.
Because if you're generating gravity waves,
you should disturb.
Actually, maybe not. Now my thought comes, I'd have to research some more.
Small enough.
Because maybe they're not powerful enough to be detected. But I would imagine if you have some kind of alien civilization that utilizes gravity propulsion and can generate gravity waves, perhaps they built some kind of thing that can be detected by gravitational wave observatory or interferometers.
Okay, let's think through this, because I'm not sure. Because we have to think about what this alleged craft is supposed to be doing, right? Is it supposed to be opposing, like opposite, equal and opposite? It has to be, right? Equal and opposite field to float in
gravity
space.
fields?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just needs to generate an anti-gravity field, I guess, is what they're saying. What he's saying.
Yeah. At least equal and opposite, right? Because otherwise it'll crash to the ground, right? It'll
Right.
obey gravity, right?
Right.
And then if it wants to accelerate, I imagine it has to produce or
it has to produce its own field as well. I think it accelerates with gravity. It's the
I don't
whole
know,
well.
because if you say that, then if you need to create an equal and opposite force, no, actually not equal and opposite. You have to greater and opposite, right?
Yeah.
Force or opposing force to gravity, then you would detect.
But maybe not, because here's the thing. Maybe this is where we're messing up, because we're thinking of traditional matter.
Sure.
Now, his thing he's talking about, he specifically says it's antimatter.
I don't fucking know.
So it's the opposite of mass as we know it. It's
Sure.
antimatter. It's anti-mass. So it has a negative mass, essentially.
Yeah, but we can measure its effects. I'm saying, what is this interaction with matter, with traditional matter and stuff like that, right?
It annihilates, apparently. At least from what Bob said in his older interview in 1989, he says that matter and antimatter is produced in this thing, and it interacts with some kind of gas that's made of matter. They completely annihilate, and they're 100% energy efficient.
I don't fucking know about that.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. So he's violating the first law of thermodynamics, and he also says this. He realizes that it's a contradiction, right?
Yeah.
And he says that this aircraft is doing impossible things. The fact that he acknowledges that, though, at least tells us something that it seems unbelievable to us, but who knows? You know, the thing is, we're dealing with technology from what Bob claims that could be, hundreds of years, thousands, or even millions of years more advanced than us.
Mm-hmm.
We just have no understanding of it. I think he gives the analogy that if you dropped what does he say? A nuclear
a motorcycle. Let's just say you drop a motorcycle
in the wagon days.
Yeah.
People can figure out how to turn the key and turn it on, but they're not going to know anything of how it works.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a true analogy. We could be just like ants probing this thing. And it all checks out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about that whole LIGO thing, because I just thought about it, that I would imagine that we would be able to detect those gravity waves now that we actually have the ability to detect gravity waves.
That's if and only if it actually interacts with gravity to that measure, because my thing is if it's opposing gravity, say it's like it's just distorting it and not it's not necessarily creating ripples. Like if you think about water and think about something like what are they called? Water gliders, right?
Not familiar.
Like you stay on the surface tension of shit. How do I say this? It's like a bubble. You ever seen a bubble that just skids along the surface?
Yeah.
Not necessarily creating ripples or anything or breaking anything.
Right.
Then it's not creating waves. It's just floating.
I think Bob said that they actually were creating gravity waves.
Oh, then they would be detectable.
But then again, the other thing that he says is they're kind of guessing, right? They're like chimps prodding the, prodding the log or something. They don't really know what's happening.
Because, I mean, we can detect gravity waves from millions and millions of years away, light years away, and
with
like,
no issue. So if there's one right localized with us, and it's the only thing on Earth that generates gravity waves, someone's detecting that, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would imagine.
That's what I would imagine.
I don't really
too.
know enough about gravity waves because that's not our field.
That's
both
our
of us.
forte, yeah.
That would be what. Whose field would that even be? Maybe astronomy
Astro.
or something. Okay. So
I think
we
Joe
don't know
might
anything about that.
I think Joe might know a little bit.
Yeah, we'll have to consult an expert. Anyway, let's move on to the next. So this is actually where we have a timestamp one. So and what was that one ended? That's at 2:18. The next one, let's go to the video 3 and start at 1 minute 16 seconds.
Yeah.
So they told you about this stuff in 1982?
Yeah, well,
No,
we
not
kind of...
1982.
What year was this?
It was 88 and 89 when
you
I
were
was
there.
there.
Oh, okay.
82 is when
82 was
I
when you were
at
at
Los Alamos.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So 88, 89, they told you about this stuff. So this was not like...
No, they didn't tell me about it. That's one of the things that this group came up with. The God, I keep losing my train of thought with this thing.
So this one area, this element 115 was the fuel.
Yeah, it was the fuel.
The world will forgive you for having a migraine. Can I just
It's really
say
hard to
one-
think through
I
this.
understand.
Just give me a minute.
We'll just give you more
I
booze.
just want to say one. Yeah, definitely. I was going to say one thing. You know, Bob, for the last 30 years, people have just been on the attack on Bob. You know, getting to know him, the personal effects on his life. It's really hard to understand unless you meet his family and his wife. I mean, this is the last thing he wanted to fucking do was have to talk.
Yeah, we should explain that, Jeremy, that
Yeah.
you and I had this conversation.
For
I
a
watched
long
your
time.
documentary. We had this conversation, and I said, I have to talk to him.
Yeah.
The document, there's been detract.
So yeah, I wanted to play that clip because several times in the video. So I guess we're gonna get into the psychology of things. A couple times in this video, you get Bob with his migraine. So he has a migraine,
unquote.
a migraine that he had before. Apparently, him and Jeremy were talking about his migraine in the car, and I guess he prepped Joe Rogan on it, telling him he had this migraine. And that was a very big tell to me that something was fishy, because every time he had a migraine seemed to be whenever he was talking about his story. He never seemed to have a migraine when he was talking about physics. It always was when he was talking about his story.
Yeah.
So that seemed like a very suspicious tell to me, where every time he would forget something, he could excuse his migraine. And then this one specifically I wanted to link to because Jeremy stepped in trying to explain away what's happening, talking about how Bob is, doesn't want any of this attention and all this.
Yeah.
This is the last thing he wants to do. This is very classic trying to cover up for your bullshit. So that was a big red flag to me. It's not a complete red flag, but what's your take on that one? Did you notice that at all in the video?
I did, and I noticed that. Once he got in the flow of things, he kind of just forgot about his migraine, I guess.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like, the thing is, I do find Bob's, like, I don't know if he's really that. It's hard to take him at face value because, for one, his credentials don't really, I was looking into this, his credentials don't really pass. And he can't remember, apparently he can't recall who the hell he fucking, any of his professors at the time that he was at.
You saw this too.
Yeah.
So he did say one though.
Uh-huh.
So I read this debunked article on Bob Lazar, and the guy asked Bob Lazar, just name one of your MIT professors, and Bob named a guy from a different school.
He named a guy from
a junior
college.
college.
From his college, yeah.
So that was a very suspicious thing. You should easily be able to name any of your professors, right?
Yeah, especially if you go to grad school.
Yeah, and then then they're specifically asking you to name one from MIT or Caltech, which he claims he went to both, and he named somebody from a completely different school that's a junior college. It's very suspicious, extremely suspicious. So I'd like to, if anybody's going to get to the bottom of that, I'd like to dig deeper into that because they've actually given a good explanation for why you can't find his records at Los Alamos or Area 50. Well, I guess you can't find Area 51, but Los Alamos, what else was it? MIT and Caltech. They said that the government has been trying to erase Bob's identity. And that sounds like something that could be legitimate because if he's disclosing,
if he's a whistleblower
secrets,
in the sense, in the modern sense of the word.
Right. They could be trying to discredit him by taking away all of his credentials, which is very easy to do, right? Especially during the 80s when there was only written information.
Yeah.
But the fact that he cannot remember any professors at MIT or Caltech, that's a very big red flag.
Yeah. Like unless he really coasted that much in grad school.
There's no way.
Where he didn't give a shit, but then him naming a junior college professor was like also something that it was like, okay, you clearly can't come up with a name, so you just went with the name that you from your actual.
It's like if you can't remember, then don't list any name.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially from the wrong school.
Yeah. Especially a junior college where
Right.
Yeah, it's not even close.
And I read somewhere that certain people did see Bob at Los Alamos. So there are people who corroborated that he actually was there.
But he may have been just a technician. He might have been a contractor. He might have been doing contracting work, doing other shit, not necessarily an engineer, so to say.
Right. And me and Juan are both physicists, so we know that these kind of people are in the facilities.
Yeah.
Like, in Juan, you actually work in a national laboratory. I don't know if I should have said that.
No. We'll beat that out. Let's just say I work in a laboratory.
Okay. But
we'll cut that out.
Shit. Okay.
339.50. Okay.
But
let's just say this. Okay,
we're both familiar with working in national labs, at least we can say. How about that?
We'll just say we're both familiar in working in industrial laboratory settings.
Okay. And there's many different types of people. You don't have to be a physicist. You can be a tech, laboratory tech. You can even be like chemists, different kinds of fields. I mean, you can be a secretary even. Like, there's so many different types of people in these places that you just don't know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you have maintenance guys. You have you have contractors.
Right. And they said that the organization that Bob was, I guess, liaison with, it was it's a government black ops or government black project. It's a private industry that works on government black projects. They're called EG&G. It was actually mentioned by Jeremy Corbell within the interview. I guess they said they could confirm, or I forget now. Let me not go down that path because I don't remember exactly.
Sure.
But one of the things was there's a physicist named something Davis. I forget his name. I didn't write it down. Maybe Eric Davis. Not sure if that's correct.
No. So what was his role in all this?
He was just a physicist who investigated, I think, Bob's claims.
Okay.
He claimed that Bob was a phony. He said he looked him up and he was actually a guy working on radiation or something, health radiation at Area 51, which is a lesser project at Area 51, which did not even require clearance.
Yeah.
So that sounds legitimate to me too. Also, the fact that if Bob was a tech at Los Alamos, he could easily get a job at Area 51 being a guy who has no clearance,
Yeah.
like a health radiation job.
Yeah.
And he just made up this whole thing to, just because, who knows? Of course, there are some other things where the witnesses who said they saw the aerial tricks and everything with Bob, they said that they actually did see that and they were harassed by the government. But this is all kind of hearsay. This was all based on an article that I read, and the guy, I guess he contacted them. And also corroborated by George Knapp, which is the guy who did the interview, the radio interview with Bob that broke initially. They said that the people who Bob corresponded with, his friends and his family, they actually were harassed by government officials. And they said that that was true.
Yeah.
Of course, this is he said, she said. I can't really confirm that, right? But the fact that several people who have no real vested interest, it seems, in Bob said that it's true, it could be true.
It could be.
But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, it could be. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of, you have to be skeptical about this because it could just be that they gave Bob, you can easily change his credentials into something that's not official to kind of like, muddy the water, so to say. So it's easy to do all that. But the thing is, it's harder to, but for me, it's also likely that maybe he has a well-crafted, maybe he did see something. Who knows? Maybe he was pulled into something and then, or maybe he accidentally saw something while working there that kind of just alarmed him, but he was talking closely with engineers or something. I don't know.
Yeah, this is a tough one to crack, is why I was saying that earlier. One of the other things I thought of only today, recently, and I didn't get to do any research on it, was Bob was arrested and he was charged with a felony.
Ooh.
So he has a felony, I think, in the state of Nevada for installing surveillance in a brothel. It's kind of weird, but the thing is, why I bring that up is because that could be an important piece of information for if he can even work in a national facility or not.
Damn, my man's horny, dude.
Bob was trying to get that, you see that alien pussy, bro.
Voyeur, yeah, I would say he's into some shit, man.
Yeah, so the thing is,
damn, they
as
got
you
him.
know, Juan, I don't think you can work in a national facility if you have a felony on your record.
You shouldn't. Any public, any public office.
Fucking up and saying, I'm sorry.
We'll just beat that out.
Yeah.
Any public office, I don't think you can have a felony. I don't think you can.
I'm pretty sure you could not work at Area 51 if you have a felony. So what I wanted to check was if he got the felony after he supposedly worked at Area 51 or before.
That would be my guess.
Yeah. That would probably be my guess. It was after as well. But if it was before, then that would be like, that's a giant like red flag right there.
Yeah.
You can always sneak in somehow because maybe somebody is not thorough with their checking.
Yeah, with their background.
But to get into two facilities, Los Alamos and Area 51, and especially regarding the extensive background checks that governments do for these kind of agencies.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's highly unlikely, right?
Yeah. Unless he's that talented, where they're just like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah. But I don't think he was. At least according to his story, he said that the only reason he was pulled in there was because they saw him in a newspaper article.
Yeah.
For Propulsion,
Putting
he
a jet
talked to a
engine
guy who was
inside of his Honda or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A true rice rocket right there. And that's not racially insensitive. Okay.
It's just like a
pressure
cooker kind of thing. So yeah,
he met with a guy who was a famous physicist, and then they brought him on the project. And that actually sounded legitimate to me. I mean, it could be the case. They're just trying to find a guy who might have a different perspective.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it makes sense when you think about like them. Honestly, it makes sense in the like if you think about the overarching kind of narrative here, it kind of does follow the MO of military, right? Because they want to keep things consolidate or what is it called? Separate,
constrained.
You want to isolated
mm-hmm.
and compartmentalized,
yeah.
so that nobody can fully draw the bigger picture.
Right. And Bob even talks about this, how they had the whole buddy system where you can only talk to your partner if you want to actually talk about anything in the aircraft.
Yeah.
and they don't want you putting a whole picture together.
Yeah.
Which is actually a general practice. A lot of times you even see in industry.
Even in industry,
you know,
yeah.
IBM and Intel and these kind of companies, they actually do work like that.
Yeah. Because there's a guy that actually synthesizes all the information instead of you. You're on the lower end. You're
right. You want people to know as little as possible with high risk security things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Let's go on to the next one.
So the next one is the moment Bob Lazar knew he was dealing with something alien.
And let's start at 37 seconds. Yeah.
I came in. There's this facility that is at S4. It's in the side of a mountain. And normally we had pulled in with the bus and gone around the front through a normal double door. This time that I went in, there were hangar doors open. I went in through the hangar door, and in the hangar door was the disc, the flying saucer that I worked on. I saw it sitting there, and we walked by it. It had a little American flag stuck on the side, and I thought, oh my God, this finally explains all the flying saucer stories. This is just an advanced fighter, and this is fucking hilarious.
Right.
So I went by, I slid my hand alongside it. I got reprimanded immediately for touching the thing. And there was a guy, an armed guard, that followed us in and just said, keep your eyes forward and your hands at your side and just walk in the door. So
I wanted to just point that out because he talked about how there's an American flag on the side of the UFO.
Yeah.
Now jump to 15 minutes and 47 seconds.
Yeah. That's kind of silly, actually, the American flag thing.
I mean, that kind of sounds believable, though. You know what Americans are.
Yeah,
we gotta fucking claim our shit, and, you know.
Totally geeked out.
oh yeah, this was great. I mean, I was excited. So I didn't care. I reading through everything, and
So you read through all the Zeta Reticuli thing, but then when you see the actual starship with the little American flag sticker on it,
well,
was that later or before?
That was before.
So before. So you see the thing before, and you say, "Oh, this is."
So he says that the American flag thing was before he got debriefed. And maybe I went maybe in the wrong order. Go to 2 minutes and 19 seconds.
Uh-huh. So here he gets debriefed, you're saying?
Yeah, go to 2 minutes 19. Yeah.
Technologically.
Well, it was I actually have to back up because there were some briefings that I read it before that certainly gave me the impression that this was going to be a weird job, but this was the first hands-on thing. This was a small reactor about the size of a hemisphere, about the size of a basketball, on a metal plate, and when it was running, it produced a gravitational field of its own. Now, this is something that we...
So basically what I was trying to get there was Bob Lazar talked about his briefings, right? The thing is, it makes sense to be briefed before you actually see technology.
Yeah.
And then he said, so at the beginning, he said he saw a little American flag on the UFO when he walked in the hangar and saw the tech. But then at about 15:47 seconds, he said that he saw the American flag before he was briefed.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense to me. So
yeah.
If I'm interpreting that correctly, it was kind of a little bit hard for me to understand what he was saying, but it sounds like to me from what he was saying was he actually saw the American flag on the ship, then he got briefed on the Zeta Reticuli stuff. But the thing is, that doesn't really make any sense because you should have been debriefed. You should have been briefed before you saw anything. And I believe he even says that in his story. I think at 2 minutes and 19 seconds, he was talking about being briefed before. I got to take this fucking hat off. He was talking about being briefed before he saw the ship, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you catch that, or do you have any thought on that?
No, not really, because I mean, those are like minor things that in the grand scheme of things could have gone either way, right? I mean, unless I mean, to me that could have gone either way. He could have just they could have just put him in the hangar bay and been like, look, this is what you're going to be working on, and then briefed him on that. They could have maybe shown him before, but it's like minor to me.
Here's my rebuttal why I don't think that's minor.
Okay.
Because the thing is, Bob Lazar specifically was saying that he didn't really believe any of the things he was reading when he was briefed. So they talked about Zeta Reticuli star system in the briefing. They talked about some of the tech, like the Gravita propulsion, all this kind of stuff. They even talked about some of the other projects in there, like the metallurgy and all that stuff, but not any real details. I think he said Project Galileo, Project Psychic, and that kind of stuff. The weapons applications, and then Project Looking Glass, which is the time distortion stuff. And all that stuff was in the briefing document. But then to me, it would be like, oh shit, you connect that once you actually see the aircraft that this could actually be alien stuff.
Yeah.
He told the story as if he saw the alien aircraft first and thought, oh, this is American. That explains all the UFO sightings.
Yeah.
So you almost have a shift in perception. If you read the briefing first, then you're going to be like, oh shit, this is actually like real legit alien stuff.
Yeah.
But then if you see the aircraft first and then read the briefing, you're going to think, oh, this is American. And then you're going to realize only what it is after you read the briefing. So it's almost two different perceptions of what happened, depending on which one you saw first. At least to me, that's what I would have thought.
Yeah, but I mean, look, even for me, looking back 10 years of things that I'm trying to recount, I cannot remember the exact order of things. I can't, you know what I mean? Like that, that to me is like, okay, well, he might have just remembered it wrong. Like it can happen all the time. I mean,
even something so significant.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think you can remember traumatic things or new information kind of in a way that makes sense to you or logically, but then, you can sort of be like, actually, it might have happened this way.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to do it that way. The psychology of it is a little bit delicate because, I feel like you can fuck things up, the order of things up quite easily.
All right. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, but it's not. I mean, I think if you're trying to poke holes at his story, you can definitely find other things that are more like glaring.
Yeah, and actually, let's talk about that since we're getting on 53 minutes here. Juan, let's go ahead to the final thoughts here, I guess. So,
wait, hold on.
Oh, what?
Speculations.
Speculations, right? So I'm jumping the gun. So, speculations basically. What do you think? What's your feeling so far? Yeah. What's your feeling so far? Bullshit, not bullshit. What do you speculate? Is he telling the truth? No. What?
I think he might be. I think some of it is partial truths, but I can't tell which ones are which because he's telling a story convincingly enough to high enough degree of detail that it's really difficult for a regular average person to just be that lucid with recounting a story like that. You know what I'm saying? Or recounting any story. Like, I mean, who knows, unless he's like a sociopath and, just like that quick-witted. But the likelihood of that is, I don't know, people would have to do a whole profile of him and all this other stuff. Who knows? Who knows if that'll ever come out? But nonetheless, I think there are partial truths in his story. I can't tell which ones are true. Like, I can't tell if he actually saw something.
So then with partial truths, that means the whole thing's a lie. Because why would he need to tell partial truths?
Because he may have seen something, but then he's crafting a story out of it. And just to kind of say something, maybe he heard stuff and is drawing a story from it.
Right. Okay, interesting.
You don't know.
So my take is I can't really say for sure. Mm-hmm. I'm inclined to not believe him. Mm-hmm. But at the same time,
I'm also inclined to not believe him. But that's what I'm saying. There's probably some nuggets of truth because he knows a lot of things. He knows a lot of details. But
right. Well, the thing is, I could see this is the reasoning behind. I can't really believe him so much. Mm-hmm. He's good at recounting the story, right? But the thing is, he's really good when he's recounting the technology, which is something that people don't understand. Is when you're a physicist, it's easy to recount the technology. So I think his story seems more believable and credible because he can explain the physics. But the problem is the physics can be come up with by someone who has an undergraduate degree in physics.
Yeah.
It's not anything mind-blowing where it's if you just have a good enough imagination and enough time and a good story, you can create this. So he's very solid and consistent when he's talking about his physics.
Yeah.
When it comes to the story, his migraines show up sometimes and he loses his place, which seems to me like it could be something from a script.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Of course, your story is a little bit harder to remember, right? As opposed to like your expertise.
Yeah, exactly.
Because your expertise you're working with all the time, and it's like a thing.
Ingrained.
Yeah, it's ingrained in you. It's foundational knowledge almost.
Yeah, memories are
not preserved.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So that is also an indicator of I can't really tell if he's bullshitting or not.
Yeah.
But this can lead us to the next segment of the finalized conclusions, where I think why I still kind of believe he might be bullshitting.
Okay, but before we get to that, I
Sure.
want to speculate on something. So let's say for instance, because there's an overarching like narrative about alien spacecraft and shit, and how he was saying we might have discovered something, right? Put your real tinfoil hat on for this.
Oh, it's on the floor.
Yeah. This is the because when I was listening to the story, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Because it kind of draws because he was saying there was a UFO that was might have been archaeologically dug, and then there was also a story about how there was a private industry who had access to some technology, right? And they wouldn't let the government look at it, but yada yada yada. They basically had access to some very futuristic technology.
Well, I think what they were saying was these aircraft now might belong to the private industry instead of the government, because they don't even like the government officials to know that this technology exists.
Maybe.
To me, that sounds a little bit weird, but maybe it
does.
kind of makes sense in the same vein that you can't really trust someone who's rotating out every 4 years, because we get a new Department of Defense guy like the Admiral Wilson, like every few
and
years,
then you don't
right?
have government oversight, which is great, because then you don't have to follow ethics or anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's interesting, but I think what's more plausible is maybe if we go through the annals of history, the Nazis were obsessed with the occult, and I think they believed in stuff like aliens and alien technology and ancient sort of mystical things. And there was some rumors that they had actually come upon some alien technology, right?
Okay, we're getting deep.
Yeah. I know. But this is where I'm going. But
This is why we need the double tinfoil hat on.
tinfoil hat over this.
I need it for this.
So let's just say that this is all true, right? So the U.S. government defeats Nazi Germany, and they obtain, for one, their scientists, but also anything that they have come upon. Because the Nazi Germany had a technological superiority to anything the Americans had, from what I can recall, right?
I wouldn't say that.
They had built the first machine gun, rocket engine, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. This is World War I, though. World War II, we caught up to them at that point.
Yeah, we did. But my thing is, or not my thing, but the thing that I've kind of gathered and what I'm kind of working on synthesizing right now as I'm speaking is maybe the Nazis had some access to some tech, right?
Okay.
And then once we defeated them, we not only got their scientists, but also their tech, their UFO tech, right? So that's where those 9, because they were saying, we had like 9 UFOs in the hangar, different types.
So the Nazis used to have them all? Is
Maybe,
Hitler an
bro.
alien?
Hitler was was Hitler an alien? Find out. But it is interesting that, because I mean, you can Google this yourself. Hitler was obsessed with the occult. He was obsessed.
Yeah, I've
with,
heard some things.
Yeah.
Also played Wolfenstein.
I haven't played it, but yeah, it is interesting that we come upon these kind of weird overarching. That's what I'm saying. Like he's saying things that you can kind of connect to other things or other incidents.
Sounds like a bit of a stretch, though.
This
but
is
maybe.
a tinfoil hat. This is what I'm saying. This is the conspiracy corner.
Yeah, that's a major conspiracy. But who knows? Maybe it's true. Maybe not.
Taking the hat off. I think he's probably, like I said, recounting some things with his time probably as a contractor at Los Alamos and hearing things, and then maybe going to work in this secret Area 51 camp.
Yeah.
Maybe he saw a couple things. Can't really say.
Cool. Well, I don't have much to say on that, but that's cool.
What's your conclusion?
So let me wrap it up because we're getting kind of towards the line here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just say there is one experiment that could completely corroborate Bob Lazar and prove him once and for all, bullshit or not. So Bob didn't mention this in the Joe Rogan documentary, and I think he's a little bit scared to, or this is a glaring hole that he's noticed in his own argument.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1989 interview, he claimed that he took element 115. He actually made off with element 115.
Oh, that's what I heard too.
Yes, and they said that he's claimed that the government had about 500 pounds worth, if he had to guess, of element 115, which is the fuel source to power these aircraft. Now, if he actually had element 115, and it could be proven that this was element 115, he could be completely corroborated. His story would be 100% true. Now, the thing is, how do you tell it's element 115? The thing is, we have element 115 on Earth, or at least we produced it in labs, right? But the thing is, the longest lifetime of the isotope of 115 that lasts the longest is about a half of a second.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
probably less. It's like a fourth or something.
No, it's like 0.6 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's Moscovian, by the way, is what we call it now, and it's like I think the atomic weight is like 290. So the thing is, Bob is very careful to never mention which isotope of element 115 this is. And people just want to immediately say, oh, Bob was right this whole time. We just discovered 115. Wrong. The thing is, you need to have the right isotope. It needs to be a stable isotope. And he also kind of says this in the interview. It's got to be in the island stability. So the way you can figure out what isotope is by using mass spectrometry.
Mm-hmm.
So I created my own kind of experiment for it, even though this already exists. I just wanted to come up with a simple model that any undergraduate physicist would be able to understand to be able to figure this out. So basically, you just need a way to... Okay, so this is what you do. Bob has element 115, apparently. At least he claimed.
Mm-hmm.
If he still has it, he just basically needs to have it in an accelerator of some type where, let's say this, in the mass spectrometer, he puts it into the mass spectrometer, it becomes ionized, so he bombards it with some kind of electrons that ionize the element 115. The element 115 gets accelerated into this chamber. Once it's accelerated in this chamber, because it's charged, it gets emitted with some velocity.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So you're picturing right now, it's just like a beam of 115 particles that get shot out of this mechanism. Now, you place a magnetic field that is perpendicular to the direction that it's being shot. This magnetic field will cause this particle to arc. It's going to rotate in a circle. So this means that you can figure out what isotope it is. And the reasoning is you just need two equations. You need the Lorentz force equation, which is just QVB in this case. And then you need the equation for centripetal force, which is just mv squared over r.
Mm-hmm.
You can rearrange these equations to give you a total equation for an equation for the total mass, which will just turn out to be the charge that you have on this isotope times the radius, which is the arc in which it bends,
Right.
times the magnetic field, which you already know because you set that parameter, and then times the velocity, which you should be able to measure because you know how fast it gets spit out.
Mm-hmm.
So the charge, the magnetic field, and the velocity are all known, and then you just measure the radius in which this particle turns. Now, once you have the total mass, you can subtract this. You can make an equation with this relating the proton mass, the number of electrons and the number of neutrons, which gives you the whole atomic weight of the atom. So that means you can solve for the number of neutrons in this atom. Once you have the number of neutrons, you have the isotope. Because you already know, Bob already claims he knows it's element 115. If you have the number of isotopes, then you have or you have the number of neutrons, then you have the isotope of element 115 that is stable. This is something that scientists can test. He could easily send this out to many different groups, chemistry groups, physics groups, whatever, that have the ability to do this and figure out what exactly isotope is. If they all independently can confirm this, he's corroborated completely, and Bob is not lying. And you can also maybe synthesize this in the future. Who knows, it may not be possible yet, but if scientists could synthesize that, it would be stable. It would be a stable element, as Bob claims. Because if you have 500 pounds worth of 115, if you have that exact isotope, that should be a stable isotope.
Yeah.
So that would completely corroborate Bob, and it would make him a completely true person who's telling the truth completely. This is why I think it's bullshit, his story now. Because I heard Vitalik Buterin say this about Craig Wright. This is the cryptocurrency world now. So Vitalik Buterin is the guy who invented Ethereum, and Craig Wright's some kind of, they call him fake Satoshi.
Okay.
So Satoshi Nakamoto is the person who invented Bitcoin, and Craig Wright claims that he invented Bitcoin. Vitalik doesn't believe this. So he basically says that if you have two ways of proving something, you have the good way and you have the noisy way. If you choose to use the noisy way, it's probably bullshit.
Yeah.
So this comes from signaling theory in biology. You can look that up on Wikipedia. It has to do with evolutionary biology. Maybe we can have Jackson even talk about that one day. But there's a good way and a noisy way. Bob is choosing to use the noisy way to prove his claims. This means it's probably bullshit. This is a signaling theory concept, and I think I tend to agree. If Bob was able to actually get away with element 115, it's extremely easy to prove what isotope it is. And if they could prove that the isotope is stable, I mean, that's a massive win for Bob.
Yeah.
And then that would actually prove that element 115, as he tells it, the isotope that he's talking about actually exists.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I would want him, I think he's afraid to sit down. I think the other thing is that he's also afraid to sit down with the actual physicist to discuss.
Right, he's never really done that, which would be an easy way to debunk him quickly. I'd like to see him actually talk to real physicists. Yeah.
I think that would, because then if you wanted to sort of flesh these things out, right? If you wanted to actually say, oh, I worked on this project, I can't really say, but then again, I can't think of any respectable physicist who might want to sit down with him and talk to him.
I mean, there's got to be someone I would.
But the thing is, I'm saying like someone who's already a public figure, like maybe
they don't have to be though. You can just be a normal physicist. You can be with the things that Bob's talking about. You can have an undergraduate degree in physics and
you can
prove these things or not.
Sitting down with somebody who knows this shit, like really well at the level that he would. I think he would be willing to maybe discuss. But then again, I think he's escaped most of that stuff because I think he doesn't want people like scientists to poke, like, to find holes in his story, right?
Yeah, and that's what makes me think it's bullshit. Yeah, he's choosing the noisy way rather than the good way to prove his claims. I'm
inclined to agree. Yeah. He's it feels like he's avoiding these things because he knows certain people will poke holes in his story for sure. I also found it odd that he didn't go to anybody. He didn't like you're saying, send this out maybe to buddies that he knew, or like, let someone know, hey, I have this. Can you please take a look at it? Who knows?
Now, here's one thing, though. Apparently, Bob Lazar owns a company called United Nuclear. You can get like neodymium magnets and all this crazy shit. Like you get uranium, I think, from there.
Yeah.
Even. And he got raided by the FBI. So, of course, this was 30 years after his first claims, though, that when he even took element 115. He claims they were looking for the element 115. I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, me either.
But apparently he got rated, but it could be the case where maybe he got rated in the past and they took his element 115. So he could always fall back on that. But to me, it's kind of like shit. Because the thing is also, Bob, if anybody, since he does own United Nuclear, easily could figure out how to send out this stuff to different groups. Like if he's worried about it getting seized by, the government or seized by someone, it's not likely because he already has such experience sending out things like neodymium magnets and uranium and all this stuff. I mean, he should easily be able to send out element 115.
Yeah.
And even if he didn't send it out, he could just do it within his local university, and they'll be able to take it in. So I'm getting massive bullshit vibes, and I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm leaning heavily towards Bob as bunk.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit interesting because he either made the conscious choice to not have this technology kind of put out there, but then again, yeah, it seems kind of like
Yeah, it's like, why go through the whole song and dance of telling people this then when you can have a definitive piece of evidence where people will be highly more likely to believe you. And it's simply so simple that I know if Bob is a physicist who understands enough to be able to do this. All you need is an undergraduate degree in physics to be able to come with a mass spectrometer. Yeah. Everybody knows about this.
Yeah.
So it's such a simple thing to overlook. I'm very skeptical.
Yeah. So am I. Yeah.
I think any final thoughts, Juan? I think that's about wrap it up, man.
I'm just like I don't know. I think I think another thing that was interesting, just one more thing. It was about gravity, and they had made a comment about how what's his name? The sidekick guy? What's his name? The guy in the video? Barry? Yeah, he was like he's like, "Oh, hey Bob, you were right, gravity is like a wave or whatever."
Oh, Jeremy.
Corbel.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. He was trying to say, "Oh, Bob was right about gravity being a wave or something."
Right. And these people have known this forever.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes back to Einstein.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And Bob actually kind of mentions that he said he had a 50-50 shot because it's either gravitons or gravity waves. And I mean, it's like... And the thing is, even if it is gravitons, it could still be a wave and a particle, just like something like light too. So
yeah, you need certain experimental parameters to see both.
Like his predictions, Bob's predictions, quote unquote, are not predictions that are like out there. These are all things that an undergraduate in physics would already be able to come up with.
Yeah, even
easily.
In the 70s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
These are concepts that have been around for a long time. Yeah. It's not just Bob magically predicting these things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very easy to come up with that because people already have had that in their lexicon for a long time.
Everything. Yeah, we've the problem is like we've had theories, we just haven't had the experiments. Like we just developed LIGO in the past 20 years or so, maybe. Give or take plus 10 years. Probably give. To finally confirm gravitational waves, right? We haven't confirmed gravitons or anything. Who knows if we would ever have the capabilities to do so. But yeah, it's just a matter of when, with a lot of these theories, right?
Right. Like the Higgs boson, for example.
Yeah.
Just got proved within our decade. And I mean, Peter Higgs came up with that a long time ago, like decades
70s,
earlier.
Yeah, 70s, 60s, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know the timeline, but I mean, these things like the physics theory comes a long time before a lot of times the experiments.
Exactly. Yeah.
So these are not magical things that Bob's predicting.
Yeah.
So what would you say, Juan? Bunk or no?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably more bunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm leaning more towards more bunk.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards it being kind of a fabrication.
Yeah.
Than
a cool story.
Truth. Cool story. I think overall, people like Bob, should be hired to write science fiction.
I actually looked at that in his background to see if he was a science fiction, if he ever wrote science fiction.
Yeah.
But I didn't find anything.
I mean, like, this is such a well-crafted story, and it's interesting enough to where it's like, wow, this is so cool. It's interesting. That's what makes it kind of interesting too, is that aspect of it. He's creating a narrative and all this other stuff. It's really it's cool stuff. It's cool stuff to listen to, but yeah, fiction is more what it is. Yeah, science fiction.
I think I agree. I guess we should probably wrap it up here. We're at 76. So
all right.
Yeah.
Next series is on Bigfoot. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
We're gonna have to look at that Charlemagne interview with Andrew Schultz. Did you hear about that? Him talking about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But no, just make sure you stay tuned, guys.
Stay tuned. I think we have I've been thinking about a couple topics to talk about or discuss. I've been thinking about looking into quantum information, what it is, what it means, what can we do with it, what does the future look like.
Sweet. So
look out for that one, guys. But anyway, thanks for listening.
Hit him with that X-Files.
Yeah, don't forget, you can find us again on Spotify, Apple,
Google Play,
yeah.
And make sure to subscribe to our channel, Eigenbros, and also check us out on Twitter at Eigenbros.
Yeah, here we go. Closing us out. The
Thank
Illuminati song.
For all you kids watching. We don't know what X-Files is or David Duchovny.
Ultimately, this is really the message. I want to believe. That's really what it is. I'm trying to believe, okay? But you guys are making it really hard. So, with that, we're out.